gas station, there's a stream valley that ran kind of this way. And most of the smoke and cracks that were coming through, so like this is a hillside, this is a hillside. And most of the visible evidence of fire that you could see was at like 20 feet of cover, right in the valley, like 200 feet from the gas station. Yeah. So their entry to the mine was somewhere about here. And the mine pool, it's flooded, and it was, let me give you. It probably was something like this. So the roof, and like it's a 10-foot coal seam. So the roof of the mine may not have completely been saturated, and there's like, they call it rooster coal and roof coal and stuff above the actual coal seam that can still burn. And we didn't know for sure that that was submerged underneath the gas station. So that was like the big thing that my boss Margaret was freaking out about, because she was like, well, if they spill gasoline and it's on top of water and it still can burn, and we're like, yeah, we get what you're saying, Margaret, so we need to be real careful. And so like there was a big hillside, and like there was, they did some like surface coal mining along portions of this, but not all of it. And they basically mined to within like 5 feet of the surface everywhere, because it was back in the days where you got all the coal out, and there were lots of other people that could mine coal if you died in there, so they didn't worry about it that much. And we were under the assumption and stuff that this was breathing somehow, because all smoke and steam and fumes were coming out, in this area. And we figured, this is the closest crop. This was also historically burned out, according to the maps. So we figured it's pulling air like through this hillside and feeding the fire. We didn't know about over here so much and everything, so like we came up with a plan that basically we drilled a bunch of wells into the mine, which he was one of our employees at the time who was helping with the drilling. Like we were all out there. We looked like a bunch of roughnecks from Oklahoma, like drilling holes. So we did that, and we overlaid the mine maps and tried to hit all the voids that we could. Just try to figure out the communication with where the fire was, what the temperatures were there, did some gas monitoring in the wells. We put about 60 wells in the ground, and we hit a majority of void space. But we also think that it's crumbled over time, and there's a lot of void space down there. But we were in a lot of the haulage ways and stuff within the mine. So, and we even had some that were in the water, and there was a plume of hot water, because we think that, as the water was draining down through the unflooded portions, it got warmed up. It actually heated up, like we got like isotherms on the mine pool and everything to figure out what was going on. So to make a long story short, we basically came up with the plan that we were going to surface mine this to a certain cover line that we felt that they could tie in an air barrier on that side to shut off the breathing there. So we're like, okay, that'll be good. And then they were going to dig a giant trench, and it gets up to like 120 feet of cover, so it's basically a mining plan to put this fire out, where we were going to tie into this air barrier with a trench that came down this way. We wanted to try to find a cold perimeter basically on the fire, so they were going to mine the whole way down through here, kind of through into this valley, which was kind of low cover, and make sure that they were staying on the cold side of everything, because if we didn't catch it, you just spent $8 million to not do anything. So, and they actually just bid this project out this month, and it did get bid out for about $8 million to do the excavation and extinguishment. But basically, they were going to do that, and so they were going to tie this into the mine pool till it was flooded, and then. And also up through this side, they were going to mine up along this burned out area to make sure everything was good and completely isolate the fire. And at that point, if it's not breathing and it's isolated, you didn't really even have to extinguish it if you didn't want to. But the DEP told us that they wanted to try to mine through that, extinguish the hot material as they encountered it, and then sell any of the salvageable coal that they could find. So they were going to just literally block mine in through here, increasing the cover until they were through the hot material, and then regrade that. They were going to re-put in a surface channel that would drain to the stream, and then we had to deal with all the water that would infiltrate down in between this box that we made so that the water could get back into the mine pool. And we had a really complex thing to go through, the air barrier and everything, and they wanted to make it simpler, so we ended up making basically a giant curtain of large riprap so that the water could flow through. And we're like, that's not airtight, but if you guys are happy with that, you know, we can deal. And they decided that to save on some costs, they would just go with a riprap curtain basically to let the mine water inside of this area get back into the mine pool. So that's that site. And like I was saying, fire and gasoline, like literally, that's the gas station right across the main road. And right where he's clearing that area out with our skid loader, we put a well in there, and that was one of the warmer wells. So you were really close to the gas station. And a lot of the locals had no clue. I mean, you could see the fumes and the steam and everything, but yeah, it just wasn't. Which actually, if you could see like the smoke coming out of the hillside, that's the valley that I was talking about. And then going just briefly into we have a micro hydropower facility at Antrim, which is like far north central Pennsylvania, up near like the Tioga National Forest. And it's basically an active treatment system that already exists, treating mine water. And there is a very large amount of drop of head up there. So they have like 130 feet of elevation relief, and they have a pretty good amount of flow. I think it's somewhere between, depending on the time of year, like 500 and 1,000 gallons a minute. So we built a penstock that takes the treated water down the hill to a turbine shed, which is what the picture shows. And there's 2 turbines there that are, they're basically generators. And they have wheels on them that the water's sitting and spinning, producing electricity. And they were bought from China, which now we have a source in the U.S. and West Virginia that can actually construct these turbines in the U.S. with stainless steel and not the materials they use, because those are falling apart. But the permitting for this was crazy because it's a really small operation that's just feeding power back to the treatment plant basically, and anything excess of that gets fed back into the grid. But because there could be excess that gets back into the grid, they treated it like the Hoover Dam. Like we'd go through all the permitting that the Hoover Dam goes through, and we're like, what? It's hard to understand why there's not shorter ways to get around that, they were always asking us, where's your dam? Where's your dam? We're like, we don't have a dam. We're putting water in a pipe out of a pond. It goes down the hill and we're generating power. And they just couldn't get that through their head because they must not have had that checkbox on their list where you may not have a dam when you're generating power. But so the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission was a big hurdle, but we've been through it once now. And there are ways to get around that depending on how you design this setup of things that would make the process a little bit easier in the future. And like I was saying, we have U.S. source materials now, which is going to also lighten the burden. And for tromps, I mentioned before, they're a passive aeration technique that's been around forever. Like we didn't invent the tromp, we just utilized it. Bruce Levitt, it's his brainchild. He came up with the idea because he remembered seeing a giant tromp in Canada where they diverted a river down a tromp and powered like rock mines and the drills and everything in these things. So, and he was like, well, why can't we aerate, passive treatment systems with water? And we're like, but we can. And so this is, well, we have two sets of tromps that are both this size. They have 10-inch down legs, and I think they're either 12 or 14-inch horizontal runs that collect with 2 air chambers. The compressed air, as it falls down the leg, the air bubbles separate in the chamber, and they get compressed. And the picture with Dan and Tim by the pond, they just put the bubble diffusers out in the pond, and everything's working, so they're pretty happy. But these ones, I mean, as far as we know, they're the largest operating tromps in the world, which not a lot of people are using tromps, so that it is what it is, but it's still kind of neat. So we dug, I don't know if you can see in the picture, but there's a trash pump up towards the top, and this one was at, I think this one was actually a rock tunnel, but we were like 15 feet below stream level, digging a giant hole, which, very wet time of the year, so we had to pump the hole out because it was filling with stream water and coming at us. So we had shoring in place to keep the hole from collapsing on us, killing everyone. And so we were in there. It was hard to get the shoring out because the sides did come into it, so we had to get a crane in to pull the shoring out after we got the trumps in place. But everything worked out pretty good. Me and Tim were down in there plumbing everything up, and they're in place, and they're passively aerating the water at Rock Tunnel. And that is actually all that I have right now. The picture in the middle is me. I saved some turtles. I also, I have many talents. There were snapping turtles in a valve box. Two of them, you couldn't grab one's tail without getting your fingers bit off. But Tim was going to leave them there. I felt like I needed to get them out, so I ended up getting them out, and I have all my fingers. And then we have some humiliating pictures, maybe of Bill more so than Kelsey. Bill's showed off a little bit, and Kelsey interned with us at one point, so she was doing some GPS work. So
I think I just normally stand.
You might. But if you have questions about anything in the presentation or anything else in general, I'm happy to answer whatever you have.